thank you for joining this live virtual forum here. We are dialing out to the 33rd Congressional District of Texas tonight. We'll be joined in a moment here by your Congressman Mark Veasey, who is here to provide updates as we approach the beginning of the school year. We'll hear from him shortly along with our guests. We have Tiffany Hewitt, the Chief of School Leadership for Dallas Independent School District, and Jerry Moore, Chief of Schools for Fort Worth Independent School District. They're here to provide you updates and also to answer questions tonight. If you've already got a question in mind, don't hesitate to press 0. Give your question to an operator. We'll be getting to those in just a little bit here. Again, hello and welcome to our live virtual forum tonight. We're dialing out to over 35,000 of your neighbors in the 33rd Congressional District of Texas. Tonight we're joined by your Congressman, Mark Veasey. He's here to provide you updates as we approach the beginning of the school year. We'll hear from him shortly and hear the federal perspective and what's being done at that level to benefit schools and school districts in Texas. But we also have representatives from Dallas ISD and Fort Worth ISD here to help provide comments and provide feedback and get everybody ready for the school year. So if you have any questions for Congressman Veasey or for Tiffany Hewitt, our Chief of School Leadership for Dallas ISD, or Jerry Moore, Chief of Schools for Fort Worth ISD, you can submit those at any time by pressing 0. We're going to get to updates first, and then we'll get to questions from you folks in our live audience. So listen in, and as soon as you have a question to submit for Q&A for any of our guests, please press 0 on your phone. Give that question to an operator. You will have the opportunity to ask your question live in our forum tonight, but if that's not comfortable for you, just let your operator know that when you press 0 to submit your question. I'm happy to read your question over the air if that's your preference. Either way, again, just press 0 to submit a question for Q&A at any time. We'll take down some notes, put you in queue to ask a question live. If you want me to read your question, make sure you let your operator know that when you submit it. Again, 0 for questions. You can also press 7 tonight to register for email updates from Congressman Veasey. We'll get your email address and make sure to keep you updated on the issues that affect you in the 33rd District of Texas in the future. So that's 0 to submit a question for Q&A and 7 to submit your email address so that Congressman can keep you updated on the issues that affect you in the 33rd District of Texas. We are broadcasting in Spanish tonight, so hello and welcome, and thank you to those of you who are listening in our Spanish simulcast broadcast. We're happy to take questions from those of you participating in Spanish tonight as well. Again, 0 to submit a question for Q&A. Again, for those of you who are just joining us, we are dialing out to over 35,000 of your fellow residents in the 33rd District of Texas. We're going to go ahead and start our forum in just about 60 seconds here. We'll start off with some introductory comments from Congressman Veasey. Then we have 2 special guests representing Dallas ISD and Fort Worth ISD. We're going to focus on the school year tonight and getting into the school year and any questions and concerns you might have about schools. So we're here to take those questions to Congressman Veasey and to our representatives of Dallas ISD and Fort Worth ISD. We already have some good questions that have come in advance of this call to help get us started, some basic questions just to go over how to get set up for the school year. But again, we're here to take as many questions as we can in the time that we have. So if you have a question in mind for the Q&A that will follow our introductions, press 0. Get that question to an operator. You can, again, either ask it live or let your operator know you want the moderator to read it. And again, you can press 7 to get email updates from Congressman Veasey moving forward. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get started with this live virtual forum. Again, we're focusing on schools tonight and the new school year, so we'll focus on that topic. So again, 0 to submit a question on that. And it's my pleasure to kick us off by turning it over to your Congressman, Mark Veasey. Please go ahead, Representative.
Thank you very much. And I want to say good afternoon, good early evening to everyone. This is Mark Veasey, Congressman for the 33rd Congressional District in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. And a special thanks to Tiffany Hewitt, who is the Chief of School Leadership for Dallas ISD, and Jerry Moore, who is the Chief of Schools for the 4th Independent School District, for taking time out of their busy schedules to have this discussion. And as many of you know, schools across North Texas are getting ready to start. I have a kid going into 12th grade, and going into 11th grade, and I wanted to hold this telephone town hall with local leaders to make sure the parents across Texas's 33rd District get important updates on what they should know before entering the school year as it relates to COVID regulations. And before I hand it off to our local leaders, I wanted to give everyone an update on what my colleagues and I in Congress are doing to sort of address these issues around COVID and our public schools and education and school safety. In the last few months, we saw an act of unspeakable evil unfold in the town of Uvalde that killed 19 students and 2 teachers. The mass shooting in Uvalde and other shootings we experienced over the last couple of months spurred Congress to pass the bipartisan Safer Communities Act. This is the most significant gun safety and violence prevention legislation that we've seen that Congress signed into law in 3 decades. This common sense bipartisan package will protect America's kids and keep our schools safe and reduce the threat of violence across our country. The Bipartisan Communities Act specifically invests in programs to expand mental health and supportive services in school, including early identification and intervention programs, school-based mental health and wraparound services, improvements to school-wide learning conditions, and school safety. I was proud to join my colleagues to get this bipartisan legislation over to the President's desk because this provided really an integral step to protecting the lives and helping protect the lives of our students and teachers. And in addition to that, I want to talk a little bit and just sort of recap for everybody what we passed last year under the American Rescue Plan. We passed into law that helped that had the largest investment in our schools, K through 12. The funding that we passed under the American Rescue Plan allowed school districts to reopen and stay open safely, make up for lost time in the classroom, and ensure students receive the services they needed to succeed. Specifically, the American Rescue Plan dedicated about $10 billion to help schools conduct COVID-19 testing for students and staff, and provided over $120 billion in states and the school districts to help K through 12 campuses reopen and stay open as safely as possible to make up for lost learning time. And schools have used these funds to purchase PPE equipment for students and staff, hire additional educators and staff to try and reduce class sizes, adjust transportation options to avoid crowded buses, and upgrade our ventilation system. And look, I know when I talk about reducing the classroom size, I know that you have been reading a lot in the paper about how school districts are having trouble retaining staff, and that they're going to have some shortages. And so we tried to help on the federal level as much as we possibly could in that area, but we know that some of our local school districts are still having some issues with that, and hopefully things can get back to normal soon in that category. In the upcoming days and months, I look forward to continuing to build on these previous accomplishments that we achieved on the federal level because we know that we need to invest in our kids. One more thing that I wanted to talk with you about that we also did that I was very proud of, and I think helped us during the pandemic as it related to kids being able to access the internet. There were several broadband pieces of legislation that I was able to get passed into law. One of them you may have seen at your local grocery store or as you were passing by retail, telephone and cellular stores, and that was the broadband benefit program. That was legislation that was drafted and introduced and created out of my office, and it allowed people, low-income families specifically, to be able to access and get a credit for broadband. As a result of the success of that program, it was renamed and put into the infrastructure bill that we passed on the federal level, and and now it's the connectivity program. And so now we have the ACP, this connectivity program, that is also going to continue to help people access broadband. In addition to that, in the city of Fort Worth, there were 5 neighborhoods that we were able to get money for. Specifically, we got the money for the city of Fort Worth, and the city of Fort Worth was able to use that money that I secured as a member of the Energy and Commerce Committee and use those funds during COVID-19 to put broadband in several lower income neighborhoods, including almost all of the neighborhoods in my district with the exception of Como. And so now there is broadband in those neighborhoods for people to be able to access. And so that's something that we're very proud of. And before I turn it over to our North Texas educational leaders, I just want to remind everyone they're going to talk about some of the local initiatives. What I just talked with you about were some things that we're doing on the federal level, and I wanted to bring them on so people would have a better understanding of how me as your federal representative, how we're able to sometimes partner and listen to and team up with our local school districts. And as I mentioned earlier, that the broadband in the low-income neighborhood was something that we teamed up with one of our local municipalities. But that just sort of gives you an indication of how it kind of works. In Congress, the way that we do things is that we have to pass something and come up with pieces of legislation that's going to benefit all 50 states. And then we really do depend on our local school districts, our local counties, our cities, to be able to implement those funds that we send to states so they can be used. And what we're talking about tonight is those funds being used for students and parents to make sure that we're trying to keep our schools safe. And so that's how we sort of complement one another. I don't have anything to do with how the schools are ran on a day-to-day basis. That's something that the DISD, Fort Worth ISD, Irving ISD, the other ISDs that I represent, that's something that they do. But we look at it from as they say, from more of a 30,000-foot viewpoint to see how we can be helpful. And so you're going to hear from them. I'm going to hand it off to them. But in the meantime, I just want to remind everyone to please get vaccinated and get boosted. It is so important, particularly at this time right now, to where really virtually no one that you see is wearing a mask out in public. And so just make sure that you are vaccinated. Make sure that you're boosted. This new variant that is out right now, the CDC has told us that the current vaccine does not cover this new variant that's out, but that you will become a lot less sick if you have been vaccinated and boosted. And now, of course, you can be double boosted. And so make sure that you do that. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to our North Texas educational leaders.
Appreciate you. Thanks so much, Congressman, for being with us. And thanks to our guests. And thanks, of course, to all of our residents in the 33rd Congressional. We're going to go ahead and start with some introductions from our featured guests with Dallas ISD and Fort Worth ISD. But just a reminder that if you want to ask a question of either of our guests or of Congressman Veasey, you can press 0 to submit that question for Q&A. Again, we're focusing on education tonight, so that'll be the focus of this forum. We'll also have some survey questions that will run throughout the call to get feedback from you folks in our listening audience. So even if you don't have a question tonight, please stick around and vote in our surveys. And thanks so much for your participation. All right, let's go first to Tiffany Hewitt, Chief of School Leadership for Dallas ISD. Tiffany, can you help the folks on the line get ready for getting back to school?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak to everyone. We're really excited in Dallas ISD to have students come back to school. You may have heard we started school on one of our 3 calendars to start the school year, and so we had several of our kids come back to school on August 1st. what I'd like to really share is that we really believe in Dallas ISD that safety is our number one priority, and we actually say it all the time. It's one of the models that we use. And we know that the last 3 years have been extremely tough for families and students and staff alike. Just out of the pandemic in 2019, after that spring when we found out we quickly weren't going to be able to return to school, that opening that school year was difficult. We knew that everyone was concerned about their health and wellness and would they be able to return in a safe environment and essentially just not lose their lives. And so we had to pivot and think through how we could respond to the needs of everyone who would return to school. Last year, mental health and wellness was front of mind, as everyone would find out quickly that it was the toughest year yet for most of our educators. We knew that it was a tough year, that it was going to be tough. I don't know that we were able to predict just how tough it would be, and so we quickly made prioritizing the mental health and wellness of our students and staff and many community members as a priority. And this year, of course, after the unfortunate and unspeakable events in Uvalde, we are prioritizing, of course, physical safety for our students and staff. We were thankful to receive over $100 million that we're able to invest in a comprehensive approach to mitigate learning loss due to the pandemic. We have several buckets that we chose to sort of invest the funds in to ensure that our students could quickly recover the learning loss that they suffered, and also really the trauma that they suffered from the effects of the pandemic. We've invested that in extended learning time, and so you'll see again, we have 3 different calendars for some of our schools. We have tutoring programs, and we have time during the school day and after school day to work with students. We've reimagined our summer experiences for students to not only include front-loading sort of the academic supports they need, but also the mental health and wellness supports that they should receive as well. We've invested highly in high-quality instruction, how we're training teachers to respond to students that have suffered so much learning loss, but also the resources that we've brought to the table to ensure that we could recover quickly. And in addition to those resources, of course, we invested heavily in our PPE equipment, upgrading our HVAC systems, technology, and other items that were needed by campuses. We want to thank many of the local voters for helping to pass several bonds where we've been able to invest over $100 million into our safety and security equipment for our campuses. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to our Fort Worth ISD Chief of Schools, and I'm sure he's going to echo many of the same sentiments, but I will tell you this year we are definitely excited to start the school year.
Thanks so much, Tiffany. And we'll go to Jerry Moore, Chief of Schools for Fort Worth ISD, but a quick reminder again, 0 to submit a question for either of our guests or for the Congressman. We'll go to Q&A next. Jerry, anything you can offer here would be welcome.
Certainly. Thank you so much. And Tiffany, I appreciate all of your words of focus in Dallas ISD, and it is true that we will echo many of the same priorities here on the west side of the Metroplex. We're very excited to welcome our students back here to Fort Worth ISD for this upcoming school year. If you are not aware, August 15th is the first day of school here in Fort Worth ISD. We welcomed principals back to our schools last week. We are in the midst of training our new teachers here in Fort Worth ISD this current week, and all teachers will return to campuses next week in preparation for an outstanding school year. We have multiple focuses for high-quality education in Fort Worth ISD schools this current school year. We, too, are focused on the safety and security of our students in our buildings, but focused on that safety while we are encouraging a welcoming environment for the students and families of Fort Worth ISD. We know that the best opportunity for a future in Fort Worth is a great education. That starts with high-quality training for our teachers. We have invested heavily in not only facilities and upgrades to our facilities, but we've invested heavily in academics and curriculum across Fort Worth ISD. We're looking for academic excellence in all of our campuses and all of our buildings. We're very encouraged with the growth that students of Fort Worth ISD demonstrated this past year. After 2 very difficult years of intermittent instruction and education opportunity. As we work to recover from those 2 years of experience, our data from this last year shows that students are trending in a positive direction and are growing even at levels that we haven't seen pre-pandemic times. We too, as Dallas ISD, are offering not only instructional programs during the day, but we are looking at extended learning opportunities for our students. We've expanded tutoring to all campuses in Fort Worth ISD so that all students not only receive instruction during the school day, but can benefit from instruction either before or after school. We've expanded our summer learning program. We had over 15,000 students participate in summer learning. We opened that up to any student who would be interested in continuing their learning opportunities, either continuing from last year or getting a head start on this current school year. As we invest in high quality instruction in our schools, we know that the training that we've done throughout the summer and as we'll continue into the school year is going to pay dividends to the outcomes that our students will experience this year, and can't wait to see students join us on August 15th. So looking forward to a great school year and happy to answer any questions that come up as the evening progresses.
All right. Thank you so much, and appreciate again both of our guests. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Tiffany. And thank you, Congressman, for being with us. We'll go ahead and jump to Q&A next here. We'll also have some survey questions. Again, you can vote on those using your phone. So get ready to vote in those if you do. We would very much appreciate that feedback. Even if you don't have a question tonight, that's a great way to participate. And I do want to mention to a couple of our callers who had questions outside of the topic tonight, which is education. Cynthia in Fort Worth, we're seeing your question. Looks like you need some assistance from the Congressman's office. We've got your question and your phone number, and the Congressman's office will be following up with you in the next couple of days, so you can expect a call. Same for Deborah in Fort Worth. And for those of you who may need assistance from the Congressman's office, if you need constituent assistance on any issue involving a federal agency, you can go to veasey.house.gov, or you can call the Fort Worth office phone number. That's 817-920-9086. Again, that Fort Worth office phone, 817-920-9086, or vc.house.gov if you need some assistance from the Congressman's office. All right, we're going to go to Q&A next, and we've got quite a few questions in line. We've got a general question on COVID, and then we'll go to Carrie and Wanda, and we'll run some surveys in between those. So, again, 0 to submit a question for Q&A, and if you want to get email updates from the Congressman's office, you can press 7. Our first question is coming from quite a few callers, so I'll just summarize it here. It's COVID cases are rising again. What are the COVID protocols for this school year? And I'd open this up to either of our school district speakers or congressmen who would like to start in on this question from a few callers asking about what are the COVID protocols for school this year.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'm happy to start from the Fort Worth ISD perspective. Sure. In Fort Worth ISD, as a district, we continue to utilize an electronic reporting system for any positive COVID cases that may be experienced, either that be with our students or with our staff. We are continuing to follow all Center for Disease Control, CDC guidelines when it comes to responding to any positive case. Staff, of course, will quarantine for 5 days if there is a positive. Our district has expanded a COVID leave, a benefit that is set to ease the burden on any staff member so that they can focus on instruction for our students. Students, if they happen to have a positive case, we do quarantine for 10 days following TEA guidelines. We do provide general notification to all households when a COVID exposure has occurred on campus. And families will be encouraged to monitor their children if any symptoms may arise. We continue to have all of our safety protocols in place on our campus. We're going to continue that even into this year because we know it's a best practice to keep our students safe and healthy in our schools, and be glad to refer any families to our Safe Return to School information that's on the Fort Worth ISD website for more information.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Appreciate that, Jerry. Tiffany, anything you'd like to add here for Dallas ISD?
I would just echo the same sentiments. We have many of the same protocols in place, and we work weekly with health officials across Dallas, Fort Worth to help us make any pivots that we might need in our protocols. This year, I know last year we started with mask mandated protocols, and yes, we do see the cases rising, but what we've also seen recently is that those cases are leveling off, and so we are in a mask recommended stage with our campuses, and we are also following all protocols, including distancing, washing the hands, and everything else that keeps our students safe.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Appreciate you both. Thank you, Tiffany and Jerry, for giving your perspective on that. And we're going to go to our first survey question next here, and then we've got a question from Kenneth, and then let's see, we've got Carrie and Wanda after that. Our first survey question for you is, how satisfied are you with the quality of education students receive in kindergarten through grade 12 in our state? Press 1 if you're completely satisfied. Press 2 if you're somewhat satisfied. 3 for somewhat dissatisfied. 4 for completely dissatisfied. And 5 if you have no opinion. So again, our first survey question for you, how satisfied are you with the quality of education students receive in kindergarten through grade 12 in our state? Press 1 for completely satisfied. 2 for somewhat satisfied. 3 for somewhat dissatisfied. 4 for completely dissatisfied, and 5 if you have no opinion. And appreciate that feedback. Thanks again. We'll get to our next question from Kenneth, who's asked us to read it. He asks, how are you going to handle school security in light of the shootings? And I'll open this up. The congressman may have some thoughts on it. Tiffany or Jerry, feel free to jump in here. Who'd like to start? Again, his question is, how are you handling school security in light of the shootings?
Yeah, please let our school officials talk a little bit about that.
I'm happy to start. So one of the things that we do in Dallas ISD is that we are really proactive, and we are constantly revisiting our safety protocols for students and staff. We actually have a safety task force that convened multiple times during the fall semester last school year and then throughout the spring. And that task force included community members and staff members and our students. And from there, we were able to actually provide some additional safety measures that we anticipated needing. You may recall that, yes, we had the Uvalde incident, but prior to that, we actually had an incident the year prior in Arlington and Mansfield. And so one of the conversations or points of discussion that we had during the task force was how do we sort of mitigate any weapons on campus or safety measures that could impact our students. And so we actually have a pretty comprehensive safety plan. We have weapons detection, such as our metal detectors. We have over 8,500 cameras in our schools. We have security monitors, police officers, and we just believe that safety in itself is a multi-pronged approach. And it includes many of the drills that we have on campus that not only our students participate in, but our staff. We also have an emergency campus operations plan that every campus is required to have to prevent and should an incident take place. We've hired additional staff to help in our security department. And, of course, you may have heard or may well know that we also conduct security audits of our campuses. And we're looking, we call them intruder checks. And what we're doing is we're checking to see if a person's able to gain unauthorized entry into our campus. And that is also being mandated by the state of Texas as well. So we have multiple layers. And we also have a community meeting that we have for Dallas ISD so that individuals and community members can weigh in on some of our safety protocols and give input as well.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you, Tiffany. Jerry, anything from the Fort Worth ISD perspective here?
Certainly, and once again, Fort Worth and Dallas seem to be very aligned in their proactive practices. We, too, have a safety task force in place within Fort Worth ISD. Our task force spent this summer visiting every single one of our campuses checking the operations of all of our door hardware, locks, safety procedures, card access to our buildings to ensure that we start this school year with everything operating for the safety of our campuses. We too have campus safety committees. We've actually recommitted to the work at the campus and reprioritized what campus-based staff will do to look at safety measures across their campus and have a cadence of monitoring the safety that's going on in our campuses, not just physical, but inside and outside of the building. All of our campuses do have campus safety plans in place, as well as emergency response plans. And we also train our administrators and our teachers around any emergency situation that may come up. This past year, Fort Worth ISD partnered with Fort Worth Police Department, sent all of our administrators through safety training at a centralized site in Fort Worth. We are now expanding that training to our teachers this year to make sure that there are no questions about our protocols and what happens should an unforeseeable incident occur at our campus. We believe that preparedness is the best safety measure that we can employ across the district. We are in the midst of looking at building facilities. All of our high schools have gone through a renovation that put secure vestibules in place at all of our campuses so that our front offices can control who has entry to our buildings. We're in the midst of doing that for our middle schools and looking at safety protocols at our elementaries as well. We do have campus monitors that monitor our buildings, as well as partnering with the Fort Worth Police Department for school resource officers and increase the presence for safety at all of our buildings there. So we will continue to stay focused on safety by looking at dress code for our students, making sure we're enforcing dress code for a safety perspective, as well as making sure that all of our middle school and high school students are properly ID'd so that any adult on campus knows students that should be in the building and those students who may not be in an appropriate place so that we can take appropriate action. Really trying to be proactive and prioritize safety of our students as usual.
And Ian, if I could also jump in too, I want to, again, just kind of cover what we've done on the federal level to help our local school districts like the ISD and Fort Worth ISD and our other North Texas school districts. Is the bill that was passed, it didn't go as far as I would have liked it to go, but it was a bipartisan bill, and it did get to the president's desk, and it is the law of the land now. And the bill that was just passed is going to enhance background checks for 18 to 21-year-old gun buyers. One of the reasons why we wanted to do that was because if you look back at what happened in Buffalo and you look back at Uvalde, both of those shooters and killers were 18 years of age. We hope that we could ban those types of weapons for people to legally purchase under 21, but we were not able to do that. But for people that are 18 to 21, now we will be able to go back and look to see was there something perhaps that happened before their 18th birthday that may be sealed that would indicate that they should not be able to purchase a firearm. And so we hope that will, again, help our school district prevent violence. I don't think there's anything that any of us can do to make sure it never happens again, but we want to make it less likely to happen again, and I think that this bill does that. This legislation also closed the boyfriend loophole to restrict gun ownerships for people that have domestic violence marks on their record, and because we know that oftentimes a lot of these shootings that we see that they are domestically related. We just saw an incident where here in the DFW Metroplex where a man actually was tried to shoot his girlfriend, shot her in the neck, and ended up killing himself. You probably saw that in the news. It's not uncommon at all for domestic violence to be and for guns to be used during domestic violence offenses. And then also we gave grants to states to encourage them to pass red flag laws or enhance red flag laws, which allow police officers and relatives and acquaintance to petition courts in order for a gun to be removed if that individual is deemed dangerous. I think one of the things that would also help our schools that I'm going to continue to fight for is, of course, the enhanced background checks. Right now, people can still make private purchases of guns without having background checks, gun shows without having background checks, and what happened in Charleston at the AME Church several years ago. That could happen again because we still haven't closed that loophole. And so I think that closing those will also help make our schools safe and the community in general more safe. And so we're going to continue to push for those. But I just wanted to talk about what we did do on a federal level to help our local school districts be able to deal with this issue. And I also want to encourage parents as well, and just take a point of personal privilege, to sort of address the two types of shooters that we're seeing. If you look at what happened in Mansfield ISD last year, where the young man was upset because he was having beef with some other kids, that person was not trying to intentionally shoot other people. He was trying to shoot the people that he had a beef with, but he was not trying to shoot any innocent bystanders, and he did. And was very fortunate that no one was killed. One of the teachers that taught at one of those schools in Mansfield Independent School District was actually shot. And so I want to encourage our parents and our grandparents out there that are raising grandkids, ask your young people to not worry about snitching. All this talk about snitching this and snitching that, like if they know that someone has a gun in the school, or if they know that there is imminent danger because someone has a firearm or some other sort of weapon, to please let a school administrator, a teacher, a coach, a hall monitor, let someone know. You can do that discreetly. You can do it quietly. And just please encourage your young person to do that. The other thing that I would also ask our parents and caregivers to do as well is that if you know someone, and this addresses the other sort of shooter that we're seeing, people that just randomly shoot people like we saw in Uvalde, if you know that someone is having a mental episode or mental health issues, please encourage that person to go get help. And if you know they've purchased a firearm, please let your local police department know about that, and let the police department know that you think that this person is a threat to themselves or others because they have just purchased a firearm. And with that, Ian, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you again, Congressman. Thank you again for the work that you've done, Tiffany and Jerry, in advance of the school year on safety. We'll get to our next question coming to us from LaShonda, who's also asked me to read it. She's asking, what is being done to mitigate the spread of monkeypox with students being back in close contact to each other, particularly as it relates to sports? And again, that's from LaShonda in Dallas. Tiffany, do you want to start in on that? Has DISD done anything related to monkeypox? And LaShonda asks specifically related to sports.
Yes. Hi, LaShonda. Thank you so much for your question. Actually, right at this time, we are currently writing guidelines to respond to any potential cases of monkeypox that we may see. We're working with, again, many health officials across Dallas to help us with those guidelines. At this time, we're sort of responding to it very much in a similar way that we would respond to reporting, and I'm just going to use this as an example, chickenpox, right? We have a reporting structure. We notify families. We ensure that we have disinfection procedures and protocols and cleaning protocols, and we also communicate that there was a communicable disease. We'll follow those particular reporting requirements, and we are waiting to hear from some of our health officials to determine if there needs to be additional guidelines, and we are definitely taking with all seriousness as we are looking at COVID as well. We're taking it very seriously. Thank you. Back to you, Ian.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Tiffany. And Jerry, anything from the Fort Worth ISD?
Yeah, I think once again we're in a very similar place and approach of looking at our protocols and procedures related to monkeypox right now. We do communicate closely with Tarrant County Public Health And we do have a mechanism for reporting and identifying any and all communicable diseases, including monkeypox. So Tiffany's example of similar to chickenpox, we are making sure that we are vigilant about any issues that may come up and working to identify our procedures to communicate with families. What we do know is many of the safety and healthy protocols that we have in place related to COVID, social distancing, frequent hand washing, hand sanitizer stations around the building, which we will continue to have in place this year, will be additional measures in place that will help address monkeypox as well. However, what we do ask of our families is if they have any concern or any reason to believe there is a health issue, please refer that to your healthcare provider and make sure that you're in communication with school nurse if that's something that you would like for us to do, because we do have cleaning and safety protocols in place if anything were to arise.
And Ian, I'd also like to add too is that I've been briefed on monkeypox by one of our local healthcare providers, and basically what was relayed to me from them was that catching it in showers or during athletic sporting and what have you, that's not what they're seeing. They're seeing that right now that monkeypox is being spread as a sexually communicable disease or STI, and so I don't want anybody to have any sort of widespread panic about monkeypox right now. Just please continue to watch the CDC and follow protocols on what they say. Our local school districts will certainly be monitoring what the CDC says, but I haven't seen anything to suggest that there are any sort of concerns. Now, with that said, kids, particularly kids in high school, sometimes do obviously engage in sex, and so please make sure that you are talking about sex with your kids. One of the healthcare provider that I'll talk to said that in some cases the use of condoms will not prevent the spread of monkeypox, depending on where the lesion may happen to be on the person. And so you need to tell that to your kid too. If you know that your kid is engaged in sexual behavior, particularly if you know that they may be engaged in sexual behavior that may make them more prone to catch monkeypox. Again, I know this I have an 11th grader. I have a rising junior, and I know how uncomfortable it is to talk to your kids and your grandkids, your nieces, your nephews, whomever they may happen to be. I know how uncomfortable it is to talk with them about sex, but they learn about sex the hard way when you don't talk with them. And so please talk with them or get them in front of the right people that can have those conversations with them so they can protect themselves.
Thank you again. Appreciate you, Congressman. Thank you to both of our guests as well. We're going to take a brief break here to run our next survey question. Then we've got Carrie's question from Oaklawn up next. Our next survey for you is this. Do you believe students should still wear masks in the classroom? Press 1 for yes and 2 for no. Again, our question for you is, do you believe students should still wear masks in the classroom? Press 1 for yes and 2 for no. And I'll remind you here, you can press 7 if you'd like to get email updates from Congressman Veasey. He can keep you updated on the issues that affect you in the 33rd Congressional District of Texas. Again, 7 if you'd like to get email updates. We've got about 17 minutes left in our live forum here, and our next question is coming to us from Carrie in Oaklawn. Carrie's asked me to read it as well. She says, school bus emissions are bad for the environment, but the air quality is even worse inside the bus. What are you doing to provide a safer environment for our children? And I'll open this up to Tiffany or Jerry. Any thoughts on this question from Carrie in Oaklawn, concerned about bus emissions and providing a safe environment for children in that regard?
First, I'm probably not as adept around the construction of our buses, but I am familiar with the emissions, and I can tell you that in Dallas, one of the things that we do is we really make an effort to ensure that our students are on the shortest bus route possible so that their exposure is limited. So we are very conscious in how we construct those bus routes. just to ensure that the student has less than maybe 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes on their bus route to get to and from school. That is our goal, of course, anytime that they're on the buses. The other thing that we're doing is we are exploring, and I don't have the exact information at this time, but we are definitely exploring some of the alternative buses that are available on the open market and determining whether that is something that we can add to our bus fleet in the future in Dallas ISD.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Tiffany. Jerry, anything to add there?
Certainly, and actually in Fort Worth ISD, we have received a significant grant where we do have a number of our vehicles that are running, of our buses in our transportation fleet that are running on alternative fuel, meaning natural gas buses, to address the portion of your question related to emissions. We too agree that it's our responsibility to our community to cut down on those emissions, and we're continuing to grow those alternative fuel fleet vehicles that we have. When it comes to the air quality inside the buses, I actually think that's a great question. Similar to Tiffany and Dallas ISD, we do prioritize making sure students are on the buses the shortest amount of time as possible, so that we cut down on the time that students are together in buses. But honestly, I probably would need to connect with our operations division for any more specific response to what we're doing specifically for air quality in our buses. But would be glad to follow up if you're interested in reaching out.
And let me just add too that the EPA is looking and has started a clean bus program, and they're encouraging school districts to buy buses that emit cleaner electric buses. So I just wanted to share that with everyone, because that doesn't necessarily affect the inside quality of the bus, but I just thought that I would let you know that the federal government is looking for ways through this clean bus program that we can help aid and assist local school districts in buying buses that do emit cleaner air into the Metroplex. You know that the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, we have some of the leading cases of asthma in the entire country, and anything that we can do to help improve our air quality on the outside of the bus, too, we want to be able to do that. And so just wanted to sort of share that with you as well.
Thank you, Congressman. Appreciate that, and thank you so much for that last question from Carrie. Let's run another survey question, and we'll get to Wanda's question from Fort Worth. Let's see. We've got our next survey for you. We're asking, how concerned are you with COVID spreading in schools? Press 1 for not at all concerned, 2 for slightly concerned, 3 for somewhat concerned, 4 for moderately concerned, and 5 for extremely concerned. Again, how concerned are you with COVID spreading in schools? Press 1 for not at all concerned, 2 for slightly concerned, 3 for somewhat concerned, 4 for moderately concerned, and 5 if you're extremely concerned with COVID spreading in schools. And while you vote on that one, let's go ahead and get Wanda up live from Fort Worth. Wanda, thanks for joining us live here. You are live on the line with our two guests from Dallas ISD and Fort Worth ISD, and, of course, Congressman Veasey. Go ahead with your question, please.
Yes. Thank you, first of all, Congressman Veasey, for this forum. My question is specifically for Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore, this is Wanda McKinney. How are you doing?
My friend, Ms. Wanda, it's great to hear from you.
You too as well. So Representative Veasey mentioned ARPA funds, and we know that Fort Worth ISD received, as a result of those funds, the elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds, or ESSER funds. And so we have the ESSER 3 funds that total about $262 million. We know that even prior to COVID, our African-American students were, their reading levels, third grade reading levels were extremely low, only 2 out of 10, and have been for some time, creating that racial achievement gap. My question is, with those funds, and this is a unique opportunity for Fort Worth ISD to not only recover learning loss, because we know that's not going to be sufficient, but to accelerate it, what specific measures, Mr. Moore, are in place to make sure that those students on those campuses receive the funds that they need? In other words, equitable distribution, allocation and spending of the funds on those campuses where those students are in the most need. What measures are in place?
Ms. Wanda, you know I always love speaking with you and know where your heart is for the students of Fort Worth ISD. As you know, and if I can share with the greater community, Fort Worth ISD did a pilot program last year when it came to instructional materials for reading at the elementary level. We actually saw tremendous results from new curriculum and new instructional practices that we put in place in 3 pyramids across Fort Worth ISD schools, to the extent that we've expanded our programming to all schools in Fort Worth ISD. We were able to do that with the benefit of ESSER funding. Ms. McKinney and anyone that would be interested, I would love to share some information that we presented to the board at our most recent board meeting that documented growth that we experienced for students this past year when it comes to our state accountability testing. We shared growth from last year's student achievement levels to this past year's student achievement levels. And then we also compared that to the growth that our African American students experienced at the same grade levels. We actually are looking at both literacy and math. And we actually, for the first time in a number of years in Fort Worth ISD, saw our African American student growth exceed that of our total population of students. So we're very proud of that. I think contribute that to the science of teaching reading. When it comes to the part of your question about what are we doing to ensure all of our campuses receive equitable funding from COVID relief from ESSER funding, we have prioritized our campuses from a school performance framework perspective. So our schools that are faced with the greatest challenges across Fort Worth ISD, all of our initiatives, programs, additional supports, staff that we're putting on campuses are prioritized with those campuses first, knowing that our goal is for all students not only to achieve at greater levels, but to far exceed the levels that we were achieving before the pandemic time. We believe that the only way that we can do that is making sure that we're looking at the specific data on our campuses. That's why we've broken down campuses on multiple tier levels and looking at the information from our school performance framework to tell us where the greatest supports and additional funding is needed to the greatest extent to benefit the students, and while we have this funding that can make the type of impact. I know you asked specifically about literacy, but I will share with you part of our ESSER funding has gone to put new curricular materials in place for mathematics at the elementary and middle school level as well, and expect to see the type of results that we saw from our literacy pilot in our pyramids that is now going to impact the entire district for both literacy and math.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you taking that on. Jerry, Tiffany, anything to add on that subject from the Dallas ISD perspective?
I think that many of our, it seems like many of our systems that we put in place for our African American students specifically very much aligned with Fort Worth ISDs, and we definitely saw historical gains for African American students and really gains that actually exceeded what we saw pre-pandemic. And I would say that our school performance framework, if it's very much aligned to Fort Worth ISD, it also includes, this framework around sort of what we call equity, and it focuses on sort of a poverty density area, how historically a school has been, a low-performing school has been historically, and we actually reallocate resources, and we ensure that we have additional resources for those campuses, and we actually call those campuses in Dallas ISD our high-priority campuses. Sometimes they tend to have a higher concentration of our African-American students, and what we do is we really focus on how we can look at the actual need of that campus. So, for instance, if we see that there's a need in reading, we would include our reading interventionists to help those students. If we see that there's a need in math, we may have a software or another set of individuals that could help our students directly with math. The other thing that we did in Dallas ISD is we actually applied direct funding to campuses based on those prioritization needs, so that our campuses received funding on top of their formula funding to ensure that they could monitor students who had the need around attendance, support with behavior support, and also additional content supports or tutoring supports. And when we say behavior supports, we really mean that mental health and wellness need. So I would say we're very much aligned with Fort Worth ISD, and we saw similar gains for our African American students.
All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate you both taking that on. And Wanda, thanks so much for your question and for being a part of our forum tonight. We're going to go to our final survey question. We've got about 5 minutes left in our live forum here. Our next survey for you is this. Have any of your school-aged children expressed any worry or concern about feeling unsafe at their school when they go back to school this fall? Press 1 for yes and 2 for no. Again, have any of your school-aged children expressed any worry or concern about feeling unsafe at their school when they go back to school this fall? Press 1 for yes and 2 for no. And this is a last call here for email updates from the Congressman's office. If you'd like to get email updates, go ahead and press 7 here. If you'd like to get email updates, again, press 7 before we get to the end of our call in just a few minutes. And we've got our next question, and this is a question that I'm going to pull from a few of our callers who are on the line and ask for Tiffany and Jerry to take it on. So the question is kind of generally, how are districts communicating changes in protocols to parents as we head into this new school year? So again, how are the districts communicating changes in protocols to parents as we head into this new school year? Tiffany or Jerry, who'd like to start in on that?
We're happy to start here on the Fort Worth ISD side. We continue to communicate with our parents in multiple ways, directly from our campus leaders at the campus level, from call outs across the district, as well as information on social media and on our website. When it comes specifically to any changes in protocols, we are in the process of updating our Safe Return to School plan. That is housed on the Fort Worth ISD website. Any changes that have happened to the protocol, which really right now, the majority of our protocols we're wanting to maintain in place just to make sure that we have safety as at the forefront for all of our students. But our Safe Return to School plan will be published, actually updated later this week. Parents can go to our website at www.fwisd.org and search for our Safe Return to School plan, and they will be able to find any protocols and any changes that have happened for the start of this school year in Fort Worth ISD.
Thank you, Jerry. Tiffany, anything you'd like to add here?
Yeah, just similarly echoing the same sentiment. We utilize social media. We definitely rely on our campus leaders and their campus websites. We also use our Dallas ISD website, and so any information you have regarding any of our protocols, you can go to www.dallasisd.org, and you can type in the keywords such as COVID or safety, and you should be able to pull up the information using that website.
Much appreciated. Thank you so much, and appreciate our guests being with us. We're going to have to start wrapping up here, but I did want to mention if anybody has any additional questions or concerns for either the Congressman or either of our guests and you'd like to leave a message at the end of the call for them, you can do that by just staying on the line as we wrap up this forum in just a moment here. By staying on the line, you'll automatically go to the voicemail system. Just make sure if you're leaving a voicemail with a question or concern, you need somebody to call you back. Make sure you leave your best phone number and your name and the nature of the issue that you're experiencing so that somebody can follow up with you from the Congressman's office. So again, stay on the line at the end to leave any of those voicemails. I'll remind you can also go to veasey.house.gov or call us Fort Worth office at 817-920-9086. And with that, Congressman, I'll turn it back over to you to offer any closing thoughts before we close it out here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, and want to thank everybody for taking part of their afternoon, evening to be with us and to hear from our local school officials. Again, want to thank Tiffany Hewitt and the same with Jerry Moore and Fort Worth ISD for taking the time to answer questions I know a lot of parents have. Please feel free to reach out to the school districts that you live in, and or to your local school to find out what they're doing as far as school safety and COVID is concerned, so you can have that peace of mind. As a parent, I understand how important that is, and I know that we have a lot of parents and grandparents that are raising grandkids and other relatives that are raising kids that are on this call that need answers to a lot of these questions. I also want to encourage everyone, if they have time during this congressional work period that we're in right now. Congress is not going to be in session for all of August. We may have to go back on August 8th to pass a quick piece of emergency legislation, but for the most part, we're going to be back here in the district for the entire month of August. And so we're having a Fort Worth Town Hall on Wednesday, August the 10th, from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at Tarrant County College. That is the South Campus off of Campus Drive, 5301 Campus Drive, and it's in the student building where the cafeteria is located. And again, that's 5301 Campus Drive, right there off of 820 76119 area code. And then we're also doing the Dallas Town Hall Thursday, August 18th, 6 to 8 p.m. at the West Dallas Multipurpose Center, 2828 Fish Trap Road, right off of Singleton. Should be very easy to find. So this will be our first in-person town hall that we've had since COVID-19. So we hope that you will come out and ask questions and about anything that's happening nationally that you can be that you're concerned about. And again, if you have any issues with the federal government dealing with casework around immigration, Social Security, military benefits, anything that the federal government covers, please feel free to call our Dallas office or our Fort Worth office. We want for you to utilize both of those offices, 817-920-9086. Call, and you can be connected to either of those offices to make sure that you are served if you're having issues with the federal government. So with that, I want to just tell everybody good night, buenas noches, and thank you very much for being a part of this telephone town hall.